This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, welcome to Drinking with Authors, Literary Briefs episode. I'm Erica Lance.
And I'm Valerie Willis.
And with us today is
Jeffe Kennedy.
Yay! Okay, so let's talk about what we're continuing to drink. I have Blue Moon, and I have oranges in my Blue Moon because I'm super fancy. Val, how drunk are you?
I'm very drunk on Regalia Rosalia.
Oh, she can't even say it. That's not a good sign.
Oh, this is so the reason I have her on the podcast, actually. Okay, Jeffe, what are you drinking?
I am drinking my new favorite brut, which is the Louise d'Estrée, which is $9 at Trader Joe's, which is the exact right price for me.
I appreciate that fully. They have one of my favorite red wines. So normally I ask a very specific question when we start the literary briefs, but I'm going to start with.
We left everyone hanging.
I am getting to that. So the question I'm actually going to ask is, explain your self-publishing journey to us, the other part of it, part two.
Because I got distracted by the whole crack hose story.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, woo, crack hose! Woo!
Crack hose! Woo! So my first publication ended up being a story called Petals and Thorns that was a BDSM Beauty and the Beast, because who doesn't want the BDSM Beauty and the Beast? And when I sold that story, it was to Lucid, which is now defunct. Mm-hmm. But they had a thing of that after 2 years, they offered to revert rights back to you.
Oh, that was nice of them.
Nice.
Yes. And so I thought, well, why the heck not? I'll take them back and try my hand at self-publishing with that one. And, and that story's earned me nicely over the years. It's been great. And with the 12 Kingdoms and Uncharted Realms books that started with the Mark of the Tala, I did those with Kensington. Mm-hmm. Book 4 was The Pages of the Mind, which is what I won the RITA for. But after book 5, they decided that they didn't want to keep going with the series. So the whole world reverted to me, and I was not done writing the series. So I continued it self-publishing.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah. And
how was that when you went into the self-publishing? Because a lot of people don't realize all the technical fun parts of self-publishing.
I mean, it's definitely a learning curve. You really have to ramp up, but fortunately there's good information out there. And I had friends who helped me. Annie Belay and Grace Draven are good friends, and they both gave me a lot of advice and were very patient when I would email them and go, but what about, I don't understand. And that's really what you need.
There was more crying. That's number 3.
That wasn't actual crying. That was whining. Maybe it was crying.
I'll stricken it from the record. It's stricken from the record.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So, but it's enabled me, because I ended up getting laid off from the day job in fall of 2015. And I had thought that at some point I would be making enough money as an author to quit the day job, but instead I got kicked out of the nest because my team got downsized. So I got a severance package and all of this. And I decided, well, I'm going to try to make it as a full-time author because that was what I wanted. But I'll tell you that if I would not be able to do it only on the trad career, that the self-publishing, because trad pays you maybe twice a year. Some of them pay quarterly, but the big money comes in twice a year, and sometimes it's not that big. And the self-publishing brings in money monthly. And so it's like that's how I pay the bills.
Does that ever have a conflict before I get into my rapid fire questions I normally ask, and I'm going to remember them? Does that ever end up with a situation with the stuff you're publishing? We've talked to a lot of authors that do have the traditional and the self, and they're limited in what they're allowed to self-publish.
Right, the non-compete agreements.
Yeah.
Yes. There are ways to work around the non-competes, and if you have a good agent, then you will. But for example, this series, the 12 Kingdoms, the Uncharted Realms, Chronicles of Dasnaria, all of those books automatically get exempted from anything new that I sell traditionally. That whole world, all those characters belong to me, and I can do whatever I want with them.
How many books are in
So,
that series?
what's that?
How many books are in that series?
A lot. Here.
That was the best thing ever. This.
Here. That's how many books are in that series.
Yeah, she's showing you the
Oh
stuff.
wow! Wow. Okay,
Yeah, so,
that's awesome.
yeah.
That was fantastic. I love that you turned around. And you're like, I
I don't know. I can count what to do.
You're up there.
18.
Nice.
Oh, are you still going on that one?
What I'm doing is, so we were talking in the first part about Under a Winter Sky and how I did the prequel novella of Long Night of the Crystalline Moon, and now I'm moving into Heirs of Magic. What I'm doing is a reboot of the next generation in the world. So some of the babies that are born in these books, it's like they're all in their 20s now, and it's starting a whole new cycle. So I'm hoping that that's a good place for people to jump into the world, because when you have a very long series like that, there are people who are like, oh, I don't want to have to read 10 books to catch up on the story. And this should be a good place for people to step in if they want to.
No, that's
That's
awesome.
a great idea.
No, that's a very good idea.
Thanks.
Okay, rapid fire question.
Rapid fire,
All
okay.
counts. I only remember about 4 of these, so it's fine.
You don't have them written down?
That wouldn't help me.
No,
Okay, the
she's
producer.
too drunk to read.
Betrayed from within.
Always. There are certain people I would list on if there was in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. I want them behind me. Val's gonna be like, I'm going fishing.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah. Because hey, I can catch meat. Right? Food's an important aspect.
anyway, back to the rapid fire questions. Why we can't have nice things. What is your favorite book of all time?
Oh.
Okay, well, that was a great sigh. Not
Yeah, I mean, I hate being asked to identify my favorite book of all time.
Well, what book do you like to reread and brings you joy?
I'm going to say Dragonfly.
Oh, okay. What is the least favorite book you've ever read?
Oh, I know this one. Deerslayer by James Fenimore Cooper.
Which one?
Deerslayer by James Fenimore Cooper.
Oh, really? Our editor in the background just did a maniacal laugh. Why is that your least favorite?
I was forced to read it in this accelerated reading group in like 6th grade. And it was the first time that because I was a reader, I was one of those people who read all the time. My mother was always like, get your nose out of the book. And this was the first time that I did not enjoy reading.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've already established you're a pantser. You do, and you want it quiet. You're a quiet monk-like pantser in your office in the morning.
She walks.
You are like the only person in my whole life calling monk-like, but yes.
Well, you want it quiet, like. Oh. Yeah, I can't do quiet. Quiet ends up. I don't know. I write for me.
I have no choice. I have small children.
Yeah.
Who argue with dogs.
So, what do you think one of your, I feel like all of us have little quirks, and I feel a lot of our quirks change as a writer, but what are your writing quirks that your editor is like, dude, what are you doing?
Or how your bad habits change. Mine can be.
I can't wait for you to remember what yours is right now.
What is mine right now? Is it nod? I think I fell into nod. Yeah, editors, what is my bad habit currently?
No, some of our friends have a lot of nodding or sighing or eyebrow movement.
Or starting all the character names with J. We've heard some fun ones.
Yeah. I actually keep a list now because I'm the Excel queen. So for each book, I'll have the letters of the alphabet, and every time I name someone, I'll put it under that letter. so that I'll know how many people I'm starting with the same letter.
That is a brilliant idea.
Jin's writing that down.
I swear it has saved me. It's like, okay, I already have 3 people with K names. I need to do something else. Well, crutch words. I do have a list that I keep for polishing and things that I search for, and my crutch words are just and now. So I will go through and do a search for those and eliminate. Sometimes I will have multiple justs and nows in one sentence, which will just be like, God.
Erica's characters are always realizing things.
And now he just decided that just now he was feeling that now she needed to just go along.
Oh my goodness. Do you have a story graveyard?
I have one novel, the Krakow novel is in my story graveyard. That one has never quite, I mean, in some ways, I mean, for all that she was mean and made me cry, it is a weird novel. And
what is this weird novel about?
Yeah, now we're curious.
It's hard. Part of why it's a weird novel is it's hard to explain. It's kind of a contemporary, and it's about like shamanistic witches.
That's not bad. That sounds fascinating.
I mean, I love this story. I totally want to write this story still. So
then why don't you?
You're
You're like a big deal, and you self-publish. You can write this story.
You
like
can totally do it.
I think maybe the time isn't right. So one of the things I've discovered, oh ye fellow authors out there, is that it almost never works with one of these older books to try to revise it. That what you have to do is start over and rewrite from the beginning, because if you try to revise it, it's just going to take you a huge more amount of time and pain. And so what I need to do is I need to start over and just rewrite this book from the beginning. And yes, I think I will.
I think you should, because you're, again, Santa Fe, I can tie this all back to where you're living, has all of those kind of characteristics to it with all the spiritual stuff. I lived in Albuquerque for a while, right next to
did you?
The expert.
I'm actually an expert. You are so sassy right now.
But she's embarrassed too, so it makes
she always
charming.
gets embarrassed. What's really fun is to watch her. So she writes a paranormal romance and all of this stuff, but she also writes the erotica stuff. And what's really super fun is to watch her. I'm even talking about her doing it, and you see the reaction.
Yes.
Yeah, she loves the word moist. Watching her try to read her stuff
or introduce my pin name of
it's Honey Cummings.
Honey.
And she actually is a pretty prolific writer as far as how much she writes. It's just she does this. But anyway, back to how I know about Santa Fe is I moved when I was about 12 years old from LA. I grew up in Hollywood, California, to New Mexico. My mom had a lot of weird situations, but the people we moved in with had a ranch right outside of the Sandia Mountains, which means watermelon, and they look like watermelon mountains at sunset.
And I see Sandia from the other side.
Yes. So the thing about these areas, especially Santa Fe, it's very, I want to actually use the word mystical. Like just being there is a very mystical experience. And I don't know, unless you're there, you don't quite 100% get what I'm talking about, but there is a lot of, I would say, spiritual energy in that area of our country. And there was a lot of Indians and stuff like that. And there's a lot of tradition, but it's also the same state that has Area 55 and stuff like that. So
Area 51.
51, whatever. 51.
Well, 55 is just a few over from 51.
Yeah, there we go. Area 51, but it's amazing, and when you go into the city, you literally can feel it.
Yeah.
And so she's right there in the.
I feel like I feel like such a hermit because I've barely been out of Florida.
I know we've talked about this.
I've only been to Ohio for like a weekend to help with a family reunion. And
yeah, no, they in Albuquerque, one of the best
Georgia.
experiences. And I told my
South
kids,
Georgia.
I'm like, we're going in the next 2 years. as soon as it's back up and operational, is the Hot Air Balloon Festival that's in New Mexico. It has one of the largest hot air balloon festivals. Over 1,000 hot air balloons go up in the air, and there's literally nothing like it. Like seeing that happen.
Oh, it's
I know you have
amazing.
to see it from your side of the mountain, and it's just beautiful.
I
Like
used to land and launch a hot air balloon in the field next to my house growing up.
that doesn't surprise me. Valerie also raised cows. Okay, going back, I think this shaman idea is. She get really embarrassed. She was literally describing we're coming to a writing retreat, which is where we're at right now. And one of our friends, Waze, took her off the main highway through this very dark area. And Val's response to that was, "Oh yeah, I used to drive cattle down that road when I was younger. You're cool. What you're gonna go down." And somehow the word Joey's garage ended up in this sentence. And I was like, this really sounds like deliverance is about to happen.
It does. Yeah.
So do you do a lot of conventions? You talk about RWA, but do you go to a lot of sci-fi fantasy conventions like NerdCon?
Well, I used to.
Well, I mean, yes, obviously, in the time of COVID. Has that affected your writing at all? This is something that's come up with some people because obviously you're a full-time writer, you're normally at home, but has it changed it for you? Because I think a lot of the emotional weight some people feel like has arrived from COVID.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because I'm such a ritualized writer, but I've been more productive this year because I haven't been traveling.
Interesting.
So
I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. All of us were like, hey, if we get to stay at home, we'll write more. And then all of a sudden we weren't writing more. And we were like, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, my life isn't all that different. Like I didn't get the disruption. The major disruption is that my husband is home, but he's I mean, we've been together for 30 years and he's immensely supportive and very wonderful about, giving me the space to write and the quiet to write. So it has not been a problem for me. I do love the conventions and I miss them. I don't know if we didn't talk about it. I'm on the board of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. I'm a director at large. And so, we were supposed to have Nebula Conference in May in California. And this book came out, Fiery Crown came out on May 25th. And I was going to have a launch day party at the Ripped Bodice and have a signing at Mysterious Galaxy. And I mean, it was like all of these things that I was really super excited to have. And it's like, people are dying, but I didn't get to have my.
I think that's true is that a lot of, it's interesting, again, being in HR, we looked at this thing and this thing happened. And I think so many of us were like, okay, well, this is going to not be happening in a little bit, right?
Right. Yeah. We just, June, July, we'll be back on schedule. And none of us thought that it was going to be Thanksgiving. And I was going to go see my family in Tucson, Arizona for Thanksgiving. And we're not. It's going to be just me and my husband. And it's like, maybe it's for the best because if back in March we knew that we were going to be doing this now, we might not have been able to keep our minds. But, and I don't mean to be flip. I'm joking about that. But New Mexico was great. We locked down very early. We've had a mask mandate all along. People here are mask compliant. And so it's really good because it's helped contain the spread here. But
we're in Florida where our governor's pretending that this is not happening.
Right.
So
right.
We've all been self-isolating is why we're together, but it's everywhere. And the governor, it's actually only the cities and the towns that have said, here are the mask mandates, here are these things. Yeah. The governor is like, we're in stage 3, we're green, we're good to go. And we're all like,
record numbers everywhere.
Like 10,000 people got it 2 days ago. It's the weirdest. And it's funny because when you live in these different areas, this is something I realized, which is different about the information superhighway. We were talking a little bit earlier that if an author says something, maybe not correct, or a celebrity, and then everybody finds out about it, like it snowballs out of control. But for instance, I've never heard that New Mexico went into lockdown and did the mask thing to start with because we're not sharing that type of information.
Cross-state information.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, our governor is an amazing Hispanic woman who used to work in public health, and she made bold choices early on, and now she's probably going to be tapped for Biden's cabinet on to be director of like health and human services, and it's like, no, don't take our governor because she's amazing, but she is amazing. So
No, that I think that's fantastic. What about writers community for you? So we just got to talk to you through Miss Snodgrass, who was like, I think I have some friends. And I'm like, cool, do you want to give me their email addresses? And she's like, maybe I'll ask them first. And I was like, that's probably a good plan because that's not creepy or anything.
and Melinda lives like down the road from me. She's like a 7-minute drive from me.
That is awesome.
Wow. So do you feel like you have a really tight group of writers around you?
Yes, both real and virtual. Santa Fe and New Mexico in general. It's interesting. You asked about conventions earlier. We have a local science fiction and fantasy convention that's Bubonicon, which is named for bubonic plague, because we actually do have bubonic plague in the wild here. But we've had panels on why are there so many sci-fi fantasy writers in the desert Southwest? Because there are a lot of us. Stephen Donaldson, I'm not even going to try for the whole thing, is in Albuquerque. George R. R. Martin lives here in Santa Fe, and he has a bookstore, Beastly Books, here in Santa Fe. There are writers that, well, we were meeting in person weekly for coffee, and now we're doing Zoom coffee. But, you know, like Trent Zelazny, who is Roger Zelazny's son, lives here, and a bunch of other people. Dorinda Jones is one of my closest friends. She lives in New Mexico. We do Zoom writing together every morning. You know, so I have all of these communities, yes, that are, you know, they keep me going.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions for the modern author is thinking it's a solitary thing. And most of us thrive with a group way better. We're way more.
Well, the writing tends to be solitary, but then you need your people to talk about things with. Yeah.
Do you ever get writer's block?
I don't.
That doesn't surprise me because your methodology and approach and your logical mind, I think it's all very complimentary because, you know, how you approach it is, when we're talking to Jeff Strand, he said he was a method author. The difference is, like, he knows he has to get this done in this amount of time, and he starts doing it. And I said, do your characters lead you anywhere? He's like, no. Yeah, I mean, your characters obviously.
He looks at me like a crazy person.
It's cool. But
no, I mean, for me, that's part of having a writing habit, that I write the words, and sometimes they feel like very slow words and they don't feel like they're really leading me anywhere. But when I hit a slow part where I feel like I'm hitting a wall, to me, that's a signal that I need to just keep chipping at it. And I will keep writing the words, even if it's very slow, and chip away at that wall. And then there's always something awesome on the other side of it.
On a previous podcast, Connie Harris, which is probably one of my favorite episodes we've done. I wasn't on it, so I'm a little jealous, but she talks about being on a panel with Nora Roberts, and Nora Roberts is asked, you know, does she get writer's block? And she goes, no, because you sit your ass in the chair and you fucking write. You know,
I mean,
yes. And that's
I love Nora. I mean, she's La Nora for a reason, and she's amazing. But I mean, there is something to that it is a creative pursuit, but it is also your job, especially if you're like, you know, keeping the lights on with it. And it's like, you're just going to keep writing and you will find your way through it.
No, I think that's brilliant because it's interesting. When I was younger, I had this concept of writer's block. And when I started writing, I had people give me all these little presents for writer's block. And I thought it was really sweet. And I'm like, I don't get writer's block. I get life block. That's what I call it. I get life coming in and going, you have this other thing. You now don't have time to write, or you don't have like a good mental headspace to write because when you're exhausted or whatever, it's very hard.
Well, and for many people, depression or other kinds of mental illness are a writer's block. And that's something that I feel like we always have to be careful to caveat. It's like if you're dealing with depression, if you're dealing with mental illness, if you're dealing with something else like that, then you need to, get talk therapy and get chemical therapy and get a handle on that. But it's not about the writing. It's about the other stuff.
Self-care.
So
Yeah,
are you
handling
still
your life.
Are you still the avid reader you were before?
I am. For a while, when I first started really writing fiction, my reading dropped off because one of the things about, and this kind of comes back to what you asked me in the first hour about did I like to write my own, or did I like to read my own books, is for me, writing a book gave me that exact same thrill and ride of reading a book that I really loved. Only it lasted so much longer and I could make everything happen that I wanted to happen, right? And so, I mean, in some ways, I do like reading my own books because they are totally my own wish fulfillment. It's like my characters get to do all of the awesome things I always wanted the other characters to do when I was reading books. So, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. So what was the question?
The question was, are you still an avid? I can't believe I know the
Well,
question.
I've been
and I'm
saying
not
it
there.
for
I'm
like
impressed.
I'm very impressed with
She
myself
never
right now.
remembers.
I don't remember, but I asked whether or not you're still an avid reader. Look at me.
Yes.
I'm
And
so
so it
practiced.
fell off for a while. And then I realized how much it had fallen off. And I made a deliberate effort to build reading into my schedule. And now I make sure that I read at least an hour every day. And usually it's 2 or 3 hours because that's part of how I refill the well.
That is awesome. Do you finish a book always, or are you willing
No.
to? Okay.
Nope. I'm in the latter half of the century allotted to me. So at this point, I have decided that I'm count. I have a friend who gives me shit about thinking that I'm going to live to be 100, but I'm like, why not shoot for the gold? So I figure life's too short. If most books, I will give them to 25%.
Oh,
But
you're way
yeah.
more generous than me.
Yeah,
I'm
you're more generous than me because it's the same concept. Life is short, and I only got so much time in a day that I can read.
Yeah,
and that's why I love that audiobooks is a thing now because I can sneak that in while multitasking other stuff. But
and you can get those audiobooks just to listen to them.
Yeah. That she's joking with you about.
You can't.
Where's it gonna go? There's nowhere to go. You're on a podcast. You're back here.
I'm sorry.
No,
sorry. I am
perfect,
something of a
Jeffe.
smart ass.
That's a high five from a distance, because she was like, "Yes, I'm seriously doing."
They do that to me all the time. So, and this is my husband will even agree that I am famous for walking myself into the perfect lineup for other people to make fun of me.
You loft those balls right up there.
And I laugh just as hard, and I take pride in bringing smiles to people's faces, even if it's at my disposal.
Your expense.
That's
your disposal. Okay.
One of those things.
No more wine.
She's super pretty. It's fine.
No more
I say that all the time to people that I work with when they're like blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh, you're super pretty today. I accomplished that. You're super pretty. One of my other questions, hold on, let me go back to it, is do you review books? So I know as an author, I'm sure you get asked all the time to read books and blah 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 because you're a big deal. But when you read books, besides the, hey, will you read my book and write a quote or do whatever, do you review books when you're reading them?
Yes, if I love them.
So what star rating and above are you willing to tag on a book?
4, but usually 5. If I can't give a book at least 4 stars, I won't tell anyone I read it. So like back to the 25%. I am a huge fan of, I have my Paperwhite, and I'm a huge fan of the free sample to my Kindle, and I will read the free sample. And if I don't like the sample, I don't buy the book, but if I like the sample, I will. And I do post my reads to Goodreads, not assiduously, but I will do it. But I,
the 25-cent word of this podcast.
oh, sorry about that.
Austin would have fell in love with her.
Yeah, Austin would have loved you. He's my other co-host. Anyway.
Yeah, my agent's always trying to get me to take the $25 words out of my book. She's like, really, prognostication? Can't we say this?
It shows your background. You know, it's always amazing to see how much of an author's life kind of does invade their writing and their writing voice. And I think that's what makes writing so awesome, and being able to find the right author, and why people get hungry for that said author's writing.
That's true, but that is a word that most people would have to look up.
Yeah.
Because you're talking to a general populace, and you say certain words.
I know.
It's not bad. And it's not great, as one of our editors over here is a PhD in English literature, is not pleased the demarcation of the vocabulary in general. Is that, but it's true. It's that, yeah, I know. I saw that.
Yeah, you use demarcation wrong. You're going to be paying a penalty for that.
I pay so many penalties. Trust me. She's my editor. It's a horrible situation for me because I am not the best at all of that. But I think it's interesting you say that about reviews. So I know you've had people ask you to read books. How has that gotten for you? Because I feel like it's one of those things where people, like even my friends who ask me and know me to go shopping with them, and they'll come out like in a dress and they'll be like, oh my God, what do you think of it? And I always go, well, what do you think of it? Because it's like, oh my God, I love it, blah, blah, blah. I won't go, well, you look like a cow in polka dots, so you should probably take that off. Because if they love it, they love it. So what happens when friends or people who super admire and are super fans of you go, hey, will you read my book? What do you do in those situations?
It's a delicate dance for sure. And I'll tell you guys a story, but I'm not going to tell you the names, no matter that I've been
how
drinking.
Much they get you to drink? Fine.
Yeah. I cannot tell you the names on this, but some friends of mine who write in similar genres, one gal had come out with a book in a new series, and she asked her very good friend, who's famous author, to blurb it. And famous author friend hated the book and told her friend that she hated the book. And I heard this from another mutual friend, that she came back and said, oh, I can't blurb this because I hated it, and here are the reasons why. And my friend and I, so there's like 4 people in this story, so I apologize if it's confusing.
No,
we were like, we're besties and we write, very similar stuff. And it's like, if I ever ask you to read my book and blurb it and you hate it, please don't tell me. And she was like, I would never tell you I hate your book. And she's like, I don't think it could happen. But, if someone is a good friend of yours and they ask you, will you read and blurb my book? Then what you do is you find nice things to say. And after a while, you get good at detecting this in other people. Like when you read the blurbs on the book. I remember reading this one that I thought was the faintest praise ever, which was something like a galloping story of knights on horses. I mean, it was like not quite that bad, but it was really darn close. And it's like, this was the nicest thing this person could think of to say about this book. Instead, you say things like, for people who love Betty Smith's stories of galloping horses, will love this book. Otherwise, if it's people you don't know, it comes to your agent, hopefully, and your agent, and so this is like my drunken confession of the secret of the industry.
I'm all about drunken confessions.
Is that your agent emails you and says, okay, such and so has asked if you will blurb this book. Do you even want to? And you'll decide based on the description and say, yeah, send it on to me. I'll try reading it. And then you can decide, and you'll say, oh no. And then your agent comes back and says, oh, sorry, she is just so busy. So busy.
No, and that makes sense. I think it's interesting, like any art form or any action that a friend does, when you go to ask them to do that action, you can't have the mind that because they're your friend that has some sort of symbolism that takes it above the fact that you're asking somebody for their opinion. Kind of like when somebody is, I don't know, does cakes. Like I have friends that do cakes, but for me to go, hey, I want you to do this cake for me, and I want you to do it A, B, and C way. I don't want to ever have a friend that goes, I don't know how the fuck to do that. And goes, oh yeah, no, I can do that. And then it's terrible. When you ask somebody to read a book, it's interesting because I don't think my story about the polka dot dress is, do they really want your honest opinion of it? Or do they want you to tell them something that they want to hear about the book?
Well, and it depends. Like if we're going to extend the polka dot dress analogy, if they're like wearing it to their ex-husband's ex-husband's wedding to the 25-year-old trophy girlfriend, and they're like, does this polka dot dress make me look awesome? Then you'll be like, okay, honey, let's go with the basic black sheath so that you do look awesome. But if they're like, I love this polka dot dress and I want to wear it to this picnic, you're like, yeah, go with your bad self.
Yeah, go knock yourself out with that. Maybe not a lot of pictures. It's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about writing advice. I'm sure you're asked this all the time, but what writing advice do you give authors?
I give the least popular writing advice, which is
okay.
Yes, which is to write every day. I think that if you are trying to write that, and this was advice that I resisted for a very long time until I decided that I was actually not producing much work and that I needed to do something about that. If you are starting out and trying to get so that you're actually producing work, writing every day at the same time every day is how you will build that habit, and it creates the structure that allows the writing to flow into it, and you train your family and your friends and your colleagues to respect that time, so that there's no like basset hound conversations. There's no there's none of this other shit, because you've got to have that space in order to have the mental quiet for the writing to happen.
I agree with the advice. I actually give the same advice often. So one of the ways I pitch it is, it's not about making the time or it's not about finding the time. You have to make the time.
Yeah, because nobody ever finds the time.
Yeah, you'll never find the time if you're looking for it, because
and other people in your life will take the time. If there's time to be found, they will take it. So you have to make the time.
Totally agree.
Brilliant. Okay. You have been so fantastically wonderful on our show.
Thank you.
I hope we get through COVID and we get to meet in person. We get to do
Wouldn't
this.
that be great?
Yes. We can bring the Drinking with Authors shot glasses and see how far we can get into the podcast with shot glasses. It can be champagne, but we can do shooters. Val will be under the table in moments. It's pretty exciting. I'm super excited about this because Val will not last through this.
No.
Well, I don't want to throw out a challenge necessarily.
But
I do have a rep for being able to drink other people under the table.
Jennifer,
where are you going? Okay, it's okay. You just sit there and be pretty for a minute. Challenge accepted. Next time we're in person, I'm bringing the shot glasses, and one of our editors will referee. I think it will be amazing. We're doing.
I'm looking forward to this. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. So I will email you. You'll get all the glasses and stuff. You have been fantastically wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
You gals are great.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I just said you gals are great. This has been super fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's okay. She's going to get off this podcast and go, was I super dumb? I can call exactly the words that are going to come out of her mouth as soon as we go. I'm going I'm gonna take a nap, and I think I sounded
You
dumb.
are awesome. Don't let anyone tell you you weren't.
This is why they get me drunk anyway, because they know I'm hilarious and I don't get upset about anything.
You were hilarious.
And
I don't think that's what people are gonna say about this podcast.
embarrassing.
Okay,
For
but
myself.
you have been wonderful. When people want to find you again, how do people find you?
JeffeKennedy.com, and you can find all of the contacts from there.
Wonderful. You have been amazing. Thank you for being on Drinking
you.
with Authors. I've been Erica Lance.
And I'm Valerie Willis.
And we'll see you next time.